Thank you, Madam Chair. I am from the Philippines, and in behalf of my country, would like to respond to the questions which were sent to us by the Secretariat in relation to the topics at hand. First, before I go on, I would like to remark that even as we are mourning and getting worried and are very concerned about the massive learning losses which have occurred as a result of COVID-19, I believe, especially after listening to the sharing of the earlier panels before our own panel, that we should also look at learning gains. We didn't only have learning losses by the hundreds of thousands, but we also had learning gains, very significant learning gains. And this is because we had to innovate, we had to create, we had to respond, and we had to continue the process of education, whether COVID was there or not. And our real experience has shown us that there are gains as well as the losses which we mourn. Now, to the first question as to the recovery steps that our country has undertaken. First, I'd like to emphasize, and I heard it also from the other countries, that they have shifted from face-to-face learning to blended learning, a blend of various approaches, various techniques, some never tried, some already tested for decades to respond to the crisis. As I said, these were gains. Examples of this would be the mobilization of parents, mobilization of communities who pitched in and recognized that education is not the responsibility alone of the Ministry of Education, but of the entire community. Mobilization of local government units, municipal units, as well as national government and partners. Mobilization and further training, further increase in capacities of our teachers, and more important of all, the increased attention that we have been giving to our youth who deserve an education which should continue whether there is COVID or not. So it's important to make an inventory not only of our losses, which we rightfully mourn, but also the gains, the lessons, the new ways of teaching, the new ways of reaching our learners, the new ways of financing that we have developed in our respective countries. The next question is how our country can be transformed to share peaceful, prosperous, just, and sustainable futures. This has not been mentioned very often, but I have noticed that many of our organizational structures in our respective ministries of education are traditional, old ways of doing, old structures, old procedures, which are not responsive anymore to the threats of COVID. I believe that it is important that we re-examine not only our curriculum, which is very important, our school spaces, the way we teach our children, but also the way we deliver services, our organizational structures, for example, for procurement, for getting and employing of new and additional staff for the production of new materials, and we are still reliant on the old structures, the old ways of doing things, and which delay very important decision making. Secondly, transformation must be inclusive. Finally, how to transform. There is talk about sources of additional financing. That is important. In the Philippines, the Constitution itself provides that the highest allocation for our budget should go to education. And this is being done. We are identifying many sources of domestic funding for education. And this is important, even as we wait for the additional funding that is promised by the international institutions. We need deeper engagement of our local governments. We have set up in the Philippines what we describe as mother academies, where mothers are brought up to date on the new curricula, the new ways of teaching. Caregivers are also involved. We have transformed our academy for teachers because new methods have to be developed. And so, even as we are doing all of this, we have already engaged in the first phase of financing, the first phase of consultation with our various stakeholders. I would like to close with the observation that education is not the sole and exclusive responsibility of the ministries of education. It is the responsibility of society, of local governments, of parents, of communities, and all those who believe that our learners deserve the future that they want. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.